So before we add any lights to this, let's go to our Layout tab, and we'll go to our Light Polys, area. And as we've established, we're actually evolving this light poly, right? It gets better all the time. We're always adding more realism to this light, and we're going to continue to do so. And if we just add one of these lights and then decide we have a better version later that we want to replace, it's going to be easier to do that if our light is positioned using effectively a tripod, the way that we've demonstrated in the past. So let's add our tripod. Let's add a locator's locator. We'll call this tripod 1. I'm going to move this over slightly in front of our object and up a little bit. And then I'm actually going to just set it to point at our object. So let's just select this item. We will select our sphere itself, go to the Setup tab, and click on Direction. So now our locator is pointing straight at our object. Now, if you'll recall, our lights want for the y-axis to be pointing at our object. So let's grab that direction constraint, and it says axis Z in the channels. Let's set that to Y. So now the Y-axis is pointing straight at our object. So now no matter where we move this guy, it's going to keep pointing straight at the sphere, which is exactly what we want. And by the way, let's take this camera. Let's go to its display properties, set that to 0.1, so it's not quite so visually obtrusive. And I'll do the same thing with this locator. Let's actually set that to 0.1 also. So again, it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. Now we can duplicate that. Let's right-click this guy and duplicate, and then move the duplicate over here to the other side. You'll see that it keeps pointing at our object as well. It's got the same constraint applied to it. We'll call this tripod 2. And then we'll need a third one. We'll duplicate this, and we'll make this tripod 3. And move that toward the middle and straight up above. All right, that looks good. And now we need our lights themselves. So we'll go to our Layout tab. We're going to add a light poly edge fade, and we're going to add another one, and we're going to add a third one. So we'll have 3 of these guys in here. I'll take the first one, take that light poly root, drag it out, and just drop it right on that first locator. There it is. Perfect. We'll go over here to this one, drag this one out right on that second locator. So we got it right on the tripod. Perfect. And take that third one, drop it on this one over here. Again, that's because of those drop actions. Taking advantage of the drop actions to make life easy. Now select those empty group locators and delete them because we don't need those anymore. And finally, we can start to actually set up and position and scale our lights. So we need these to be smaller, and I'm going to do that not by changing the scale of the actual light, but by changing the scale of the tripod, because that way we can ensure that when we drop in a new version of this light, it's going to go exactly where we want and be the right size, right? So let me demonstrate that. I'm going to scale these down to whatever we think the right sizes should be. On this one, I'm going to scale it out so it's nice and wide. So I really like these, right? But let's say that we decide that we want a different version of this light in here. So I would go to Light Poly 3 and delete that out, right? Because we don't want that anymore. Delete that whole thing. And then I'll drag in a new one. We'll just use the edge fade again because that's what I want. So I'll take this guy, expand it, drag it right out onto this locator, and now it is both positioned and scaled properly for our object. So I'll delete this. Perfect. Really like that. Now we can actually start to adjust these lights to look the way we want. So we'll go to our Render tab, look at what we've got. We've got a little bit of light in there, probably not bright enough. So let's use our handy dandy lights. Let's take this first light, we'll grab its control, and we'll drag up its luminous intensity, and I'm actually going to set that to 3. So we have lots of light coming from up above. And on the left side, I'll set this luminance intensity to 2. And on the other side, we'll set this one to 2 as well. Let's grab this guy, 2. And then I think I want for this top light to be a little bit square, so let's increase its squareness up so it's nice and rectangular up top. And folks, that's looking pretty good, right? It's a good start. Now let's talk about how to fine-tune that and get it nice and analytically clean so that we know that everything's going to look right in our future material assignments.